with her to become an advanced confidence coach. And it was using, to be blunt, some of her ideas and some of my own ideas came up with this book. And it's basically people do have the confidence, but they need to be shown that they do have it and to rebuild it.
So it's actually tapping into one's own skills.
Yes.
Can you give us a couple of those steps, perhaps, so that anybody listening, because they can actually download the book, can't they?
They can, yes.
Perhaps then people who are watching us today can actually download the book for themselves.
You have to start with loving yourself, trusting yourself, and basically getting on and doing it. Because if you don't, no one can do it for you.
No, and I'm sure you found this in my own experiences. Have you noticed that in the last few years, when people have come to you, that they're actually looking perhaps for you to do that work for them?
They're looking for an instant answer, and there isn't one, I'm afraid.
No, it does take a lot of work, doesn't it?
It does.
Have you met anybody that... because people assume that it's people coming to you that are going to do this hard work, which is as it should be. But in actual fact, I know that you put a lot of yourself into your clients.
Yes.
That you absorb a lot of their perhaps negative energy, and it can be very tiring. But has there been somebody special in those 7 years that really stands out, that you met, who came to you for help, and who you look at now and think, now that is all worthwhile?
Absolutely. There's a young lady particularly who came on one of my workshops, and she was unhappy in her work, but she wasn't sure why. And we worked through a few of the exercises, and she suddenly had this aha moment, and she said, I know what I want to do. I want to give up my job. I want to move off the island, and I'm going to go and work with animals. And she's done just that.
Absolutely.
And she had
drastic.
a high-powered job in a big corporation on the island.
So very drastic. Can I ask you what sort of steps you took her through to get her to that point?
It was letting go of the past, which is one of them, because that is one of the big things where people think, I can't do this because in the past I did X, Y, Z.
Is that because they failed, or because it didn't produce the result that they actually wanted at the time, even if it was a different result?
It can be either of those things, but often it's because they failed, so they think, I failed, I'm not doing that again. But you have to keep trying, because I think it was Einstein who said, don't know how many times it is you fail, the 1000th time you will succeed, and make the other rest is just practice. Exactly. Or something similar to
There's
that.
a lovely story that I heard along those lines, that was a very famous Stallone actually put his script for Rocky in 400 times, and he actually sold his dog, his beloved dog, to keep going.
Yeah.
And just as a week after he sold his dog, he heard that his script had been accepted, and he went back and he offered this man thousands and thousands of dollars to buy the dog back, which I thought was greatly relieved to hear. But he actually persevered 400 times to get his first script. So I can understand where you're coming from. This person who went on to work with animals, had she loved animals before, or was this sort of a sudden inspiration?
It was a sudden inspiration. She wanted to go and raise money for the RSPCA or PDSA or whatever it was she wanted to do. Well, she upped sticks and went. And
what about another step? Because you've got 7 steps there. What is the final step?
The final step is getting on with it. Actually going out there and doing it.
Do you find that people actually like to talk about what they're going to do a lot, and don't actually achieve that? They don't go out and actually put that into practice?
They say, I'm going to do so and so. When? Well, if we don't set a date, it's not going to happen.
No. So is that the same with most things, that we don't have anything measurable? I know when people come to me and they say, I'd like to lose 3 stone. I say, well, how much do you weigh now? Well, I don't really know. Is that because people aren't really sure about where they are right now in their lives?
They need to know precisely where they are and where they want to go. They may not necessarily get to where they want to go through the route they thought, because you've got to be open to all sorts of ideas.
Yes.
It's a bit like a motorway, if you like. You've
Yes.
got to take the right turning. You might not want that turning, you might want the next turning. You don't know what's down that turning, do you?
In the 7 years, have you been surprised yourself as you've evolved as a practitioner? And have you surprised yourself too, suddenly thinking, gosh, I wouldn't have done this 10 years ago?
Absolutely, yeah. I wouldn't have done it 10 years ago. Absolutely not.
What's been the most surprising thing, do you think, for you?
To actually get where I am and write the book.
Well, it's been a year in publishing. We're going to talk about your book in a moment.
Yes.
It's taken a year to get it to this point, and
Yeah.
we're going to talk about the fact that you've got your book launch coming up at the end of this month. How long did it take you to write the book?
It took about 8 months. I mean, not solidly writing,
No.
obviously, because
No.
I do other work as well.
Well, let's talk about that other work too before we talk about the book, because I obviously want to focus on that. You're also a sports psychologist.
Yes.
And you work with young people.
Yeah.
So you're actually being able to work with kids on the ground level rather than obviously at the other end where people are saying, well, I'm perhaps in my 40s and 50s, I'm told I could live to 100. What am I going to do for the next 40 or 50 years? You're working with kids at ground level.
Yeah.
What is the difference and sort of the reaction you get from them?
It's the motivation, it's getting them going and giving them the visualisation. You've got to visualise yourself winning. And they think, oh, I don't think I can win. Yes, you can. Just keep thinking, keep thinking. Run this film through your head of you winning and winning this. You're getting this medal pinned on you. And they do get better, much better, because they think, yes, actually, I can do it.
Do you think people, particularly that age, they look out into the distance and they say, right, I want to be an Olympian. I want to be in the 2012 Olympics. But it seems such a huge, long road to travel that it frightens them. And that people have lost that ability to say, well, I'll take one step at a time.
You have to take one step at a time, and I think you're right, yes. And also, a lot of the time the parents are pushing from behind. My little Johnny is going to be world champion like Seb Coe. Perhaps, but maybe not. Maybe they might win the world championships and not the Olympics. But it's still an achievement.
Is this going back to what we were saying about people's expectations being created by other people? Is this also parents perhaps whose own expectations haven't been met in the past?
Possibly they haven't, yes. Perhaps they're trying to be successful through their children, and perhaps their children don't necessarily want to go the same route that they went.
No. I mean, there is the argument too that people say, I want my children to have better than I have had or more. And of course these days going to university and college, despite the difficulties this year, is so much easier than it was sort of 20, 30 years ago. What do you see as the future though? Because one of the things that worries me slightly is that kids are viewing the world 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, either through the media or through the computer. And I wonder sometimes whether or not we're creating a fear culture that makes them think, well, why should I bother?
I think you're right. A lot of the news articles say that children aren't educated properly and they're not going to get jobs and there's no point in them going to university. And if they don't want to go to university, fine, don't go. Get yourself a job and do what you do like.
Yes.
I think that's the basis of the thing, isn't it? You must do what you do like.
I think so. There must be an awful lot of people, and through necessity, are perhaps doing jobs that they don't love. I think you and I are both lucky in as much as we're doing jobs we love. But
yes.
It didn't happen in our 20s, 30s and 40s.
No. Fully develop your character. It changes as you go along.
Yes, well, I still sometimes say I don't know quite what I'm going to do when I grow up.
I don't think I've ever grown up. So.
Do you ever meet young people in their 20s and 30s who feel that they have done all the developing that they're actually going to do in their lives, and that's part of the problem?
There are some, yes, who are very fixed in their attitudes. And that may come from their parents, that may just come from the society they're living in, the people they're living amongst.
Or is it safe? Do you think
it
it's
could
safety
be, yes.
to be within
They don't want to get outside their comfort zone, yes.
No. This has got practical exercises, it's got some case studies. Can you sort of, I know it's difficult at the spur of the moment, to talk about any particular case study where you've got somebody in the book that actually has gone through this process?
There's a young man I can think of. He's, I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, it's gone straight out of my head. He buries people.
Yeah, oh, he's a funeral director?
That's the one.
Yes.
And
a very safe job, I understand.
Yes, very safe job. And he'd lost his identity completely.
Yes.
He was somebody's father, somebody's husband, somebody's uncle, somebody's son. And he'd lost all his confidence. He loved the job he was doing. He was offered promotion. He didn't want to have promotion because that would mean sitting behind a desk. He loved the hands-on job he did. He loved meeting the people and treating them with respect. So we went through a few processes through the
various steps.
The various steps, and his confidence has changed dramatically. He now has got time for himself without feeling guilty, and he's got all his confidence back.
Well,
It's
it
amazing.
sounds like you have hit the nail on the head with this book, and I'm sure many people are going to find it extremely useful. Again, this is What You Believe Creates Your Reality, and you've got your book launch coming up. Very exciting.
Yes.
And that is September the 28th, that's Tuesday at 6:30 at Waterstones, 118 High Street in Newport. Anybody who lives on the island obviously will know Waterstones there. And I presume you're getting very excited about this.
I am. Yes.
Have we got the outfit?
Not yet.
Oh, well, that's a good shopping trip to come up there. Maggie, all the best with this book.
Thank
and
you very
many
much.
congratulations.
Thank
I know
you.
how hard it can be to get the love and also the attention to detail down on paper, and I'm sure it's going to help an enormous amount of people.
Thank you very much.
So that's Maggie Curry with What You Believe Creates Your Reality. Thank you, Maggie, and thank you too for joining us today. That was Live at 5. I'm Sally Cronin. Please join us again tomorrow.